Hello, good afternoon, everyone. So this is basically a three-video series about what is design and actually how to complete your e-portfolio. So if you realize that this video is a bit long and a little bit unpolished because it's actually done the very last minute on trying to help a bunch of people to complete their assignment. So I have not scripted it. This is actually me just reading out loud in front of computer and in the evening after my work. So it's just to try to help just a basic understanding of design philosophy, the design cycle, and how to complete the e-portfolio for criterion A and B. So this video will mostly be about design in the IB MYP context, and what is the content of design and how do you approach this subject. So if you don't already know, IB is actually stand for International Baccalaureate. It's actually part of the NGO that try to set up a curriculum for education. So it is a very complicated situation which I'll not be talking about. If you actually want to understand IB, I mean, there would be a lot other video and literature that you want to look into. Specifically, you can go to IBO and go to Google Scholar to search about a few research they have done. They have very, very good research and paper writing skills and so on. But today, my idea is about design in the MYP context. So in terms of design, first of all, I really hate the name that shouldn't be called design because that actually confuses people with a lot of things like graphical design, visual design, and so on. Or when people say I'm a designer, they're mostly creating 2D or 3D art for other people. But in this case, a design is a completely different idea. I like to call this subject problem solving with practical solution and not with black magic, or just basically a solution providing situation. So a designer in this case is a solution provider. So it's part of the design subject actually challenge the student to apply practical and creative thinking skill to solve design problem, which is of course creative thinking, solving problem. The second one, explore the role of design in both historical and contemporary context. So how does design help the world to move on, and what are the innovation that we have in the past? And last thing, consider responsibly when making design decision and taking action. In this case, it might be ethical and what's that called? Ethical and moral decision, as well as many environmental impact that we try to do in our design and so on, which all three of this has almost nothing to do with a graphical design. That's a very different set of skill. Okay, so in design, it's actually a very what do you call it? It's a very engineering research course just bind together with a little bit of hand-on skill and so on. And the most important thing in design is actually try to complete your e-portfolio for your e-assessment. It is not a compulsory subject unlike one of the core subjects. So it's one of the group 6 subject that you choose between visual arts and music and PE. So you can either choose between the two or design. So the philosophy of design is very different. It's not really all about using technology, but you do need to have a very fundamental, it's not very fundamental, quite an advanced research skill on what is the problem that you try to actually solve, what is the background of the problem, what could be the cause of the problem, and what can you make the situation better. So the concept of design actually is come from three different stream of curriculum in PYP program, which is primary year, which is about 7 to 11 or 12 years old. Yeah, so there's arts, ICT, and science. If you don't already know, ICT stands for Information and Communication Technology. So design is an amalgam of all three subjects. So you need art because let's say you're doing a product design on a website, it has to look good to the user. ICT, maybe you're doing a website, you're doing some coding, you're doing some sensor-based mechanism, you're doing some engineering, you need certain ICT skill in it. And science, of course, will be about the physics, will be about the ergonomic, will be about the user interaction, social science, and all this comes into design as a single subject. So of course, if you're going more advanced into the diploma program, which is sort of like a pre-U program in this case, it goes into things like computer science, design technology, and ITGS. So all these are more specific, more advanced, while design is more in between these two, but it's a combination of all of the different things that you need to go into. So this subject actually help you to understand the career in fashions, food graphic, and all this design. It also helps you in architecture, where you design buildings and outlook. It helps you in education, in trying to communicate your thing properly to an audience that never seen your idea and design before. And many like engineering, manufacturing, advertising, media industry, and project management, among others. So it's a very wide field. It's a very, very different field compared to most of the subject that we have. And the most important thing here is that there is not really any there's not really any content or anything that you can memorize to prepare yourself for this subject. It's not like science where you need to understand what is the sedimentary rock and what is that called? Chemistry, you need a periodic table, reaction, acid and base, and so on. So in this case, there's practically nothing. What you have to do in this case is to understand how to solve problem and how to write it out properly. Okay, so design has something called a design cycle in MYP. So this cycle forms the backbone of the design subject. So there are four different quadrants on this cycle. As you can see, they go from A, which is inquiry and analysis. B is developing ideas, creating the solution, and evaluating. So this is actually very black and white. So actually, I found one of the website called Stephen Taylor here that actually give things in a more colorful way. So a design cycle has four quadrants: inquiry and analysis, forms our criterion A, developing ideas form our criterion B, creating the solution forms our criterion C, and evaluating cost forms our criterion D. So it's a cycle because it usually goes from A to B to C to D to A and so on. When you are doing a product, when you are trying to design a solution, you have to go through a cycle a few times to really get a really specific and accurate solution to the problem that you have. So this is actually quite hard to read. So let's actually go on to this one. So this will be easier for everyone to understand. So the first thing that you have to understand in design is that it's not a static cycle. It's not a one-way cycle. Every single quadrant can jump to another when you need to. So you're developing ideas and you need some feedback, go ahead and do that. If you're doing some research, inquiry analysis, and you need to create a solution, and you go back to the research, and it can jump around. However, when you're trying to communicate a report, when you're trying to tell a bunch of people that never seen your product before, using a design cycle is a lot easier and a lot smoother for people to understand the story of what you're trying to tell them. So in design, you're not really evaluating on the quality of your product. They do affect your score in the final way, but most importantly, they are trying to evaluate based on how well you can tell a story and how well do you communicate your progress and story to your user. So in this case, the first step is inquiry analysis. So the first step of telling a story is the story background. So when you tell about Lord of the Ring, they actually go into the place where the what's that called? The dwarf? They're not dwarf, they're the other one. The midgets and the minions. Sorry, I'm not very well knowledge in Lord of the Ring, but where Bilbo Baggins live, what are the place, what is the background of the situation, who is Gandalf, make that clear to people, what is the background of the situations. So every single criteria, which is here called criterion A, inquiring analysis, has four different strands. I'm not sure they are called strands officially, but I'm just gonna call them strands here for ease of understanding. So in this case, inquiry and analysis is trying to research the problem. So first of all, you need to explain and justify the need for a solution to a problem for a specific client and target audience. So of course, no problem is too big and no problem is too small. If you are trying to solve global warming for the world, it's fine. Just specify your target audience is the world or UN or any big countries that actually can do anything to do that. But if you just want to fix your cousin's drawer, it's fine. You can actually design a jewelry box for your cousin and trying to design a box for your cousin. It's fine. There's no reason that it cannot be specific. It can be as specific as a single person or a country. Doesn't matter. What you need to do is explain and justify the need for a solution. So why do you need this solution? Because they're suffering, they're dying, or it's very inconvenient to them to use their old product, and their old product is disintegrating, and then a new one, so on and so forth. So this is the part where you try to tell people why do you need this solution. Okay, so once you're done that, identifying and prioritize secondary and primary and secondary research need to develop a solution to the problem. In this case, you're trying to tell people how you would get the answer. So in this case, identify and prioritize primary and secondary research means that primary research means you get the information yourself. Primary research can be things like you're asking your friend what is their preference, while secondary research is like what is the length of an average human being. So anything that you get from a source that's not yourself is called secondary because you got it through a proxy, while primary is everything that you do yourself. So this explains how you will find the answer to your question. So in this case, we call them guiding questions. So there can be what is the average size of a human hand, what is the average size of a human leg, if you're designing a shoe, so on. If you're designing a website, is that where can I host my website? How would I find a situation? You can say, I'm going to go to internet, I'm going to go to a few website called example. I don't want to name anyone here. And then I'm going to search using the keyword. Let's say I'm going to Google the keyword ergonomics. I'm going to Google the keyword chair. I'm going to see what's come out and what is the most familiar thing that I can have. So that will be a secondary research that I just described. So the next one will be analyze a range of existing product that inspire a solution to the problem. So when you're trying to design something, never try to be overly innovative. You have to base your design based on pre-existing technology or something you can actually make. If you cannot actually make it with your own hand, try to tone it down a little bit, try to be specific on it, and try to design something you can actually make yourself. And try to make it as simple as you can, because that will be easier for you to describe not just the mechanism, technology, but it's easier to convey a story when people are trying to read to your solution to the problem. Okay, then lastly, you develop a detailed design brief which summarize the analysis of relevant research. So a design brief, people often misunderstood this as what is your product about. But in this case, design brief is not about your product. It's not yet about what is the detailed, super detailed description of your product. It is not. This section is here to summarize your research. So if you have a guiding question as what is the average size of a human feet, because you want to make a product, this should include the size of the product that you want to make. So this answers every single question that you asked just now through a very, very simple description. Simple description of your product. You do not want to make this product yet. Yeah, it's a detailed design brief. It's a very there's a detail and there's a brief, so there's a paradox right there. But this section is not for you to describe your product yet. This section is for you to summarize what are the questions that rise and what is the answer that you have found. And based on all the answer that you have found, you try to make a very simple description of your product. Okay, so that's what criterion A is about. So now let's go to criterion B. So criterion B in this case is try to develop the idea for the problem, because we found the problem, we sort of found a solution for it, but we are not really sure. Now we are really solidifying our idea on what we want to make. So in this case, there are again 4 strengths and trying to convey a message. So the first one is develop a design specification which clearly state the success criteria for the design of a solution. So a design specification is just that how you can describe your design or your product or your website in a different array of aspects. It can be from the aesthetic, it can be from their cost, it can be from their manufacturing process, it can be the price range that you want to target, and so on. So every single thing over here comes from the research result you have from your primary and secondary research and your design brief. So onwards, do another more detailed specification right out of what your design should be. So I think Mr. Stevenson website has a very clear write out on what kind of thing you should and should not. So how you write a design specification, it has to be simple, straightforward, and testable. And when you write in something that people can actually measure or understand. So you don't say that my product has to be long, you say that my product has to be 6 to 9 meters, and so on. Okay, so what is the success criteria? So that it is a good product if it's between 6 to 7 meters, but if it's 8 meters, if it's too long, so on, because you need to justify this later. Okay, so the second strand is actually develop a range of feasible ideas that can be correctly interpreted by others. So this can be done in many different forms, but the easiest way is to just sketch it out on a piece of paper where you try to sketch as much idea as you can. The usually rule of thumb is just 3 different sketches or just 3 different rough idea of how it is designed together with all the annotation. So annotation is very important because it helps to describe things that you cannot convey on a piece of paper, especially when you're just drawing it out. So annotation usually have to include 3 things if you're doing a product design. Is the material, and it's the functions, and it's the dimension. So how big it is going to look like, what kind of material you want to make it on, and what is the main function and selling point. If you can, your inspiration of your design, that all needs to be go into this one of the 3 design, and make sure you have 3 slightly different one that design around the design specification. You don't want to have a chair, a table, and a building, and it is not the same design that you come up with. Go try to be as close as you can. You can do a table that is rectangular, you can do a table that's square, or you can do a table that is in a different material than the first one, or have a slightly different leg. So design ideas should not deviate too far from the original design specification. So last one is present the final chosen design and justify its selection. So in this case, is between the 3 of them, try to get one of them out, rate them from 1 to 10, which one is better, and try to choose from them. And justify its selection is basically just write a short paragraph on how you want to, why have you chosen this product, why have you given it a certain score in a certain place, why is it the best in terms of aesthetic, why is it the best in terms of the materials. Justify the selection, justify the numbers that you put in for them. So lastly is develop an accurate and detailed planning, drawings, diagram, and outline of the requirements for the creation of this chosen solution. Which is why just now I say that when you want to design something like a product or a digital design, you do not want to make it overly complicated that you cannot make yourself. Because in this case, develop accurate and detailed planning will need you to write down every single thing that you need for you to complete your, what is that called, your product. So if you are making a table, let's say, you have to give a plane, a wood plane pane or whatever. So the tabletop, basically, you have to give me the dimension of the tabletop, you have to give the dimension of the 4 different leg, and how you're going to connect the table and the leg together. Is it through a screw, is it through an L bracket? So is it, if you're using an L bracket, is it glue, is it screws, is it, I don't know what you're going to use it for, and what other tools do you need. Do you need a hammer, do you need screwdrivers, do you need a saw, do you need like a CNC router machine or whatever? Doesn't matter, everything write it there as detailed as you can, and make sure that everything that you write down is the one that you need. Don't write things that you don't actually need. Okay, so you're making a table, do not write a computer because it's not really that relevant. Again, make it simple, make it straightforward, and make it easy to understand, make it too easy to justify. So we'll keep the criterion C and D for next video, but let's now go into how to write our report for criterion A, inquiry analysis, and how to write our report for criterion B, developing ideas. Okay, see you in the next video then.